Welcome to Geek Out Weekly, the podcast where we geek out not so strongly. I was about to say the usual on a roughly 7 days basis, and that would actually make sense because it's a day early today.
Yes.
Although if you are a podcast listener or a YouTube watcher, I guess it'll be Wednesday anyways. But we are recording this one day early on the weekend, because why not? It's not because life finds a way. That's right. We're talking about Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We're not. This week we're talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The first two episodes have been out. New Disney Plus Marvel MCU show. I'm your host Aadil, and I'm joined, as almost always, by Ben.
Hey.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing it today instead. I have, as Adil alluded to, I have my daughter home with me tomorrow because the school decided, even though it's the Easter holidays, we'll have an inset day. Why not? So she's got a 3-day week next week.
Is that really what they did?
Yep.
And they did it on the front part of the week and not the...
Well, because it's Good Friday next week. So for anyone who
but you would...
the schools will be closed next Friday as well. So rather than doing Thursday and Friday as days off, they decided she had Friday off as well, actually. So she's had a 4-day weekend.
Good Lord.
I know. Crazy.
And then we didn't watch something that she could talk to us about.
That's true.
So we're recording now. I now want a kid-friendly special episode with Evelyn. That'd be great, actually.
I'm pretty sure she could talk to you for hours about Rescue Riders or Paw Patrol. You know those.
I was going to ask if she was into Paw Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
My niece and nephew have now grown out of their Paw Patrol days, but that definitely was a thing for a long time.
Yes.
But I didn't understand what it was because I used to, until I visited them because they'd talk about their favorite show, Paw Patrol, and I'd be like, okay, cool, yeah, a show. But I misheard them every time for like months, and because I don't have immediate kids in my vicinity, so it was just these conversations. I thought it was Papa Troll.
That's probably a very different show somewhere in the past.
Yeah, but it sounds loud. It was like, oh yeah, you can totally immediately imagine some kid's show about like some dad troll.
Yep, absolutely.
He's got dad bod, troll hair, Papa Troll. Anyway, but isn't what's his name canceled because he's a cop? Didn't that happen in the summer?
No, it didn't. It didn't get canceled.
No, I'm saying as in cancel culture got to the cop.
Chase. Cop
yeah.
No, I don't think
they should have canceled him because he was named after a bank. Really, come on. Anyway, now that we've got the asides aside, as always, I'm going to ask you, Ben, first impressions.
I really like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It started off very strong for me. We go back to it almost every time we're talking Marvel at the moment, but those first 2 episodes of WandaVision were a little bit kind of slower, and you can see why with Falcon and the Winter Soldier they have just jumped straight in with this. I was going to say maybe we're a bit more familiar with the characters, of Bucky and Sam than we are of Wanda and Vision, because they've just been in it that little bit longer, with them coming in Captain America 2, Winter Soldier. But following on from that film, this show is giving me what I want. First impressions are very, very good. Really enjoying it so far.
I like it, but don't love it.
Okay.
I think it does the acting well. I'm a little... Some of the writing is just not as tight, and I think because WandaVision was so good, I just was expecting that caliber of tightness around writing, and there's just some really loose scenes where people are just expositioning for the sake of it and stuff.
Yes.
And it's kind of jarring because WandaVision didn't manage to figure out how to do that type of thing in a very clever way or just more sincerely, and I feel like it pulls me out of Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I guess in a way it's sort of WandaVision was kind of its own self-contained thing for the first half of that show.
Yeah.
It didn't touch much on the outside world until we got maybe 3 or 4 episodes in, whereas Falcon Winter Soldier is straight in. It's kind of right. The universe or the world is in this state, so we need to start giving you a little bit of backstory. We need to give you some exposition about what is going on currently. Whereas WandaVision didn't have that problem. It was like, this is what's happening in this vicinity, and we will then build on the world and how everything is working with that. This is just coming in like, if you don't know anything about the state of where we are after Endgame, here it is. This is where Cap is. This is what's happening, and trying to kind of almost not set them apart, but sort of let WandaVision have its own sort of space, whereas Falcon and Winter Soldier is a continuation of the Marvel universe, I suppose.
Yeah, very much so. It feels like it lives in the MCU, while WandaVision could be its own thing. It would struggle without all the information. But I think also its premise of being a literally bottle episodes, because it's a bottle town, really helped not in that way, because you didn't have to kind of force information for onboarding new people.
Yes.
But yeah, some of the, I mean, we'll get into it a bit later, but probably when we discuss different scenes. Mostly the writing, it's a more action oriented show, so it doesn't need to be as tight in the narrative. But the overarching stuff is super interesting to me, and I'm on board with it. And it's just, like I said, some scenes just are kind of loose, and it makes me worried when it dips more into the race stuff, and also austerity and resource stuff. Like, these are big themes that could easily be hand wavy, not well dealt with, and that would be disappointing. But right now, it's 2 episodes in, it feels like they're at least trying to attempt things in a deeper way. And so that gives me hope, but that's also sort of why I'm a little more hesitant. You know, they wrote this how much long ago I made it, but like the fact that the truck's shipment that they want to prevent in beginning of episode 2, vaccines. I was just like, ooh, that might hit some people some weird ways. Because if it's a People's Liberation Front stealing vaccines and they want one world unity, you're like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think this is where it's trying to be like the greyest show possible. It already looks like it's going to tackle a lot of kind of social issues, and you know, as you said, I really hope that they do that very, very well. And it's not just, here is racism, here is class oppression, here is these sorts of things, and that's it. I want them to tackle those things. You know, we've already kind of seen that race is going to be, or at least in the first 2 episodes, has been a bigger thing, with Sam handing the shield back and then them going, here's new white Captain America, rather than Sam being the continuation of that title, as was kind of alluded to at the end of whichever last Marvel film was, Endgame. Yep. And then obviously the roll up on them in the neighborhood as well. So they're peppering in these things, and you can see, you know, my yeah. Let's get into this, right? So
yeah. I thought we would wait until that, but I'm happy to jump into this theme because it's where some of my qualms are.
Yeah, and it's important. It's very, very important. It's very important that they get this right. As you say, it cannot be kind of hand wavy in them saying this is an issue, but we're not going to deal with it. And I think in some way you can kind of see, like with Sam's reaction and his sister's reaction when they announced the new Captain America, you can absolutely see what they think about that. By the way that they acted and the dialogue, the look on their faces, you can see exactly what they were going for.
Both of them act the hell out of that.
Yes, scene. Absolutely. It's really, really good. It's really, really powerful. But then the scene where the cops roll up in episode 2 in the neighborhood, and you know, they come in strong on Sam, and then it's like, oh hey, no, you're a famous person, don't worry about it. And oh no, but we've got to take your friend away.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing. It was kind of just scene,
Yeah. Can
and
I?
that's kind of it.
Yeah. Can we? I wanted to spend some time on that
Yeah.
scene because I feel like this is one of the scenes that really made me go, "Ooh, that's really."
Hmm.
Because like, so it's like what mid episode 2,
Yeah. Yeah.
early, yeah, right. And so we've already sort of established some really good like Sam's family's on hard times. They're fisher people, which I really like because you never see African American
Mm.
uh, people working in fishing. Like it's not a standard job you see in pop culture, but obviously, like black people do all kinds of jobs,
Yeah.
right? And they're struggling, and I really I think they do a good job of showing what the impact of the blip on regular people via Sam's sister and her family and their
Yes.
squabble because he's out of touch literally and literally, I guess
Mm.
literally, in that he wasn't around for those 5 years, but also because he's a hero and his whole life is totally different. And the
Completely.
MCU, and I think that's such a cool way of showing like we've been paying attention to just the Sam layer
Hmm.
since before the blip. And then by showing him being disconnected from her reality before he left, they're like, yes, and this is a fully fledged populated world with regular people that we haven't noticed. And we're sort of we get like the audience gets tarred with the same brush as Sam in that movement.
Mm.
It's really clever because then you're like, oh shit, what is it like for these people?
Yeah.
And you kind of feel bad just for not noticing or thinking about. Like I just think it's very clever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And just to for
yeah,
one moment, the TV show is the perfect place to do that. They can take it a lot slower. You know, these Falcon Winter Soldier episodes are about 40, 45 minutes, something like that.
40, yeah,
Yeah,
47
around
ish.
there. So I don't know how many episodes we're getting, 8 to 10. So you're looking at a good 6 to 8 hour experience with all of this. So they can take things slow. It doesn't need to be that superhero level thing. We can see how everything impacts, and I completely agree that it is really good to see, you know, normal people and how their experiences have been, based on the massive calamities that have kind of befallen them on a world superhero level scale. So yeah.
Yeah. So IMDb has it at 6 episodes, by the way,
Oh wow. Okay.
which is short.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but so I want my criticism sandwich was something good. So I really liked that. I thought it was well done, and the fame hero worship flip of both the banker and the cop is really cool.
Yes.
It's like, but not enough. I liked that. But so let's. Sorry, I'm now trying to do too many things. We're talking about that scene. We're in a low income neighborhood.
Hmm.
We're visiting to visit Isaiah, right? We see all people of multiple ethnicities in the background, etc. It's just poor neighborhood somewhere,
Hmm.
America, right? Um, and they're visiting Isaiah and his kid, who are both black, or his grandson probably, right? And they leave and they just start arguing in the streets,
Mm.
and immediately, but not that much. Immediately, a car comes up, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And it's like, I just, I know. I mean, yes, cops are really so. It's it's happened so quickly. There's like, what were they just on patrol and stopped because no one called them because no one
Yes.
would
Yeah.
call for an argument on a Sunday in the afternoon kind of thing in the streets.
Mm.
I get what they're trying to do, and I might be off base and thinking this just happened too quickly, um, and too strongly in the sense of like they left and they were arguing for 40 seconds and then the cops were there. um I liked, as soon as the cops were there, I liked the handling of it, right?
Yep.
of
Yep.
of Falcon being like, no, you don't get to do this, because he's in a position of power that he can do that.
Mm.
Okay. And he's not saying I'm Falcon, fuck off. He's saying you don't get to do this, which is a privilege that most people in his position wouldn't have. And
Absolutely.
so like, um but then, and then they're like, oh, the flame switch, cool, right? But then another car comes up. Like, wait, you
Mm.
called for backup for an argument in the streets? There's
Yes.
no way in hell you did that. And if you did, that car wasn't a block and a half away. And also, they didn't give any ID over.
Hmm.
And then, like, Bucky, we're arresting you. And you're like, who's Bucky? And how did? And then they're like, you broke the terms of your
you
parole
have
by
to,
not doing your therapy. It's like, that is not written on a fucking APB, right? Like, the arrest warrant doesn't say he did all these things. Make sure he knows that. Like, it's just it's so poorly written to cap the scene off. And I was just really frustrated because the point they're making is there and it's good, and it seems like they condensed the scene for the sake of exposition or to move the plot forward. But then the whole scene rang real hollow for me because of it.
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely, I can see that completely.
Yeah.
It was, and yeah, as I said, the scene kind of happens, and then that's it. It just stops. Like, oh, see you, Bucky. Cool. You're in the car now. Fine. There's no deconstruction or discussion or anything like that about the experience that they've just had. But then, I guess, when do we ever experience that kind of thing? You know, when do we as people ever see the other side of those kinds of scenes? We get the police's side a lot in the media. We won't go into what's going on right now here in Bristol, but we get that, and we don't often get the other side of it from the either sort of like victims or people just kind of being, even if criminals or such who are taken in that kind of way and picked up by police in that kind of way, we still don't get their side of things very often. So whether it's just a lack of experience on the part of the writers to not know how to then handle that next bit, or
this is sort of,
or whether it is just kind of, no, we got to just keep things moving. We needed to get them there, so this is how we've done that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what the worry I have is, like, it's like a token addressing race issues. But once you bring it up, I think there is a bit of a responsibility to, especially given the past year. In this case, I'm talking about Black Lives Matter, not COVID, which is kind of refreshing when I say given the last year, and I don't mean we're all locked in boxes. Oh, that's a bad turn of phrase for the thing I was saying. I'm just gonna stop talking because I'm not helping this. Oof. Okay. So, yeah, given that it's not like the tensions weren't there before, but they were very much made very public and people part of the conversation, and that's a good thing. But then to kind of pull your punch or half-ass it, introducing it is a choice, and you make it. I think you have to, like, once you're in the discourse, especially when you're a big property, like there is a bit of a, like, we'll do it right. So, for example, if, like, we walk into the ID part of the scene, and it's very clearly, like, he's like, what are you doing? And he's telling him, like, you don't get to do this. You don't just get to come up to me because I'm talking loudly in the streets, even if it annoys people. Being loud in the streets, it shouldn't be an offense. Then he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Falcon, da 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 da. And then I expected him to be like, it shouldn't matter who I am. You don't get to do this. And that's what the scene seems to be building. And this is exactly what you were saying. And then they're like, shweep. Actually, Bucky, we're here to arrest you. It's like, no, what? Are we to believe that they just were asking Sam for ID and they were secretly called for Bucky? That's who he was. Because I think the idea is they pull them over because he's a black person yelling.
Oh, they absolutely
and then
roll
they
up on
somehow
Sam.
find out who Bucky is and finds out he has an arrest warrant.
Yep. But it's, again, as you say, they don't ask for ID. We have this with other people. Like, how famous is Sam that people on the site are like, you're familiar, but I'm not quite sure. Bucky, he shouldn't be familiar at all, right?
Well, that's what
they shouldn't know who he is.
That's my other thing. Is they're like, it's a condition of your pardon. Like, I thought no one knew he ever came back. They even start the show with Bucky's dead in the Captain America exhibit. I don't know if you caught that.
Yes.
But there's a thing like Bucky Barnes, was a friend, and I actually wrote down in my notes, like, would they really have 2 paragraphs about Bucky and the Captain America? Like, he's just a guy. Captain America served with a bunch of people over a decade.
A whole squad.
Like, it was just, and and also, like, it's a one room of Captain America exhibit. They're not going to go into detail about any of his partners. It was just struck me as, again, like, forcing exposition in a place that didn't feel right, which I just expected more from Marvel writing.
Sure.
And that going back to that scene, it felt the same way. It's like, but you've just made a big deal about how knows he's back. The pardon clearly is not on high on the radar. He's a non-entity, and then the cop quickly says, "Oh, Mr. Barnes, there's an arrest warrant for you, but I'm going to call you Mr. Barnes and not be like, there's an arrest warrant for you. I'm a cop. I'm an aggressive cop. I should just throw you in the car." But then it makes it seem like, oh, well, he would go to any white guy and be like, oh, and like, I don't think they're trying to make that point. They're just trying to get him in the car.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
it's so jumbled in things, especially the pardon exposition, which just felt like a studio note or something of being like, you have to tell him why he's getting arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want to do it in the next scene, but they really should have, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, this is what I mean about, like, it's just some of these scenes are really not tight, and unfortunately, they're some of the more pivotal ones, I guess. Well, like, so to finish my criticism sandwich, the scenes like you mentioned with the sister, Sam's sister, are great. They're so good. They paint such a good picture of the world, and one of the key issues, obviously, of this show is going to bring up the what it means to have had to live with half of the people in the world gone for 5 years, and then them coming back, and the destabilization of both of those things in the world. We learn about the GARC, the
something
Jurassic
for reunification people. Council.
Yeah, I wrote it down, but I don't remember where it did, so that doesn't really help when you don't know where your notes are. GRC, yeah. Anyway, the Global
Reunification Council, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Essentially,
yeah,
just want to make the world back into the way it was.
No, that's the JRC is the world governments trying to help people who came back.
Yes. So sorry. So yeah, the GRC to get it back to the way it was before the blip.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yes. So like those scenes, and like they're so well acted and they're paced well. Like there's home life with them. The squabbling takes a while. That gives you the exposition, but doesn't feel like exposition bomb. And like it's like I feel like the show was sold on those scenes, and then to get it into these 6 episodes or whatever, they're like, and then the beat police come in, and by that I mean like got to get this beat in, and then this beat, and then this beat, and then it's like quick condense, and then it's last couple seasons of Game of Thrones where it became about the plot, not the people. That's the worry I have.
Absolutely, yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think so far from the like the general beats, you know, them saying right, we kind of want to address all of these people coming back and the state of the world. We want to address the state of not just the heroes but their families and those sorts of things. We want to address government and oversight and these kinds of things. You know, the whole idea with Captain America now kind of being a government agent rather than an Avenger as such, and a kind of like a free agent. You know, there's a lot of things around that they're trying to, as broad brush sort of strokes in these first couple of episodes, starting to kind of allude to and try to build up to, which I think is great. And it's really good if they're able to deliver on those, right? And if they're able to say, yes, there is a big issue with governments having super soldiers and being able to kind of do what they want, or, you know, like a world council kind of determining exactly what is going to be happening. And getting into all of the ideas behind, you know, like what SHIELD was, what Hydra was, and all of those sorts of things before that. And they can bring all of that in. And I think that's one of the reasons why Captain America 2 is the best Marvel film. And I want to see that in this. And it's great that they've alluded to that. But it is all about those scenes and how they actually deliver that. And so far, I think from what we're sort of saying,
it's a mixed bag. So let's actually hop to the action. And then maybe we'll go into the flag smashers or whatever. But let's say, I mean, it's well choreographed.
Oh well, yeah, it is. It looks really good. Yeah.
I mean, it's so it at the end of the day, this is like a military-ish superhero action show.
Yes.
And those parts they do really well. And I think, well, the opening shot, like you said, started really strongly. the like canyon helicopter wingsuit stuff was gorgeous to look at.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it totally.
Mm-hmm.
This is when I thought about what was going on. Um, but it was real pretty,
It
which is
was,
kind of what I wanted.
and again, it's like the first scene is already setting you up for those kind of like big government moves or world stage kinds of things. Like, can't cross the border, we can't
Yeah.
operate over there, so you've got to make sure that you do it before you get there.
Yeah.
Oh look, your suit, the backpack just magically
Fixed
started
itself.
working again,
Yeah.
so you're going to get there in time. And yes, it was beautiful. It was really good to look at, but nitpicky bits.
I mean, so, and I don't want to come off as I'm just looking for everything to go wrong, but I think with this, it struck me immediately throughout the scene, just like how much was in service of spectacle versus like it just. I mean, given that it's an air fight, I'm gonna have to say it just didn't feel well grounded.
Very good.
But like, so one of my things is they want to show off their animation of his wings so much. It's like why does he open his wings in small spaces all the time? Or like so many times throughout the show, it's like wing hit the guy. I'm like, just tackle him. What are you winging for?
Yeah, I mean, you could just use the boost on it, couldn't it? I don't think his wings need to.
I mean, that would be
unfurl.
really cool. That would show some versatility, right? He just boosts into someone and wings for other things. But it's more of like, okay, so they've got this weird hijack a plane plan. And their plan is to take it into Libyan airspace that the Libyans won't care if they're going.
Yeah.
But also, they've all prepared squirrel suits to escape in.
To then get in helicopters.
And they've got 3 helicopters as backup to steal a plane. Like, what is their plan and why do they have all these things? It doesn't make any sense, except Falcon has beat them to here, so they need something to fight back against him. But it's like, if I'm planning to steal a plane, ooh, a brown guy on the internet saying that. Right, if I were to do that, I would have maybe an escape plan if it went south.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if I was working with the Libyans, those helicopters would be here to guide me in, but those weren't Libyan helicopters.
No.
They were the LAF, and they were outside of Libyan airspace. So that doesn't make sense. So these helicopters are just hanging out near the Libyan border.
They're just flying low, I guess, underneath the plane, just in case.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, if that was your plan, that's a lot of money to spend to just in case. But like the idea that the squirrel suits were there and it wasn't ever clear to me, maybe I missed it, why they were kidnapping the one guy.
No, I don't think they I don't remember. If they did, it was a throwaway line that sort of just said, here's this guy.
Yeah, because it became a big deal to make sure he wasn't kidnapped, but it was a plane hijacking, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know whether it was a plane hijacking or whether they were there just to get that guy. He just happened to be on a military transport, or did they have the helicopters and squirrel suit down to infiltrate the plane in some way? Like, I don't know. There's lots of stuff that this could be as to why they have this kind of setup, but we're just not given anything on that. And I think, again, talking about some scenes being throwaway, this opening scene is essentially to say Sam's still around kicking ass.
Which I think is great. I think you don't have to tie everything together. I think
absolutely.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Right. In the same way that in Justice League, Wonder Woman attacks those random terrorists.
Yes.
I do think it's weird that those terrorists had like a weird political agenda that was interesting and then never touched on again. But the idea of just finding a criminal, that's what superheroes do. That's fine, right? But again, they have these squirrel suits. They seem to be fighting Falcon without them on, and then they suddenly have them. And then they jump out, and you're like, now I'm suspending my disbelief on costume changes. Just because you wanted to have a squirrel suit scene, which makes sense with Falcon, but then you realized, oh, he's got a jet-propelled wingsuit. He will easily catch them all. Quick, shoot the thing. And then we'll fix it with rerouting and then have a cheesy line of like, I just found one.
And
you're like,
the AI of the suit or
No, it
the
was his
thingy
little
must just
robot,
work itself.
Razor Wing. What's it called?
Red
Red
Wing.
Wing.
Red Wing.
Yeah. But yeah, and all of that was like a spectacle to watch, and like the individual moments of flying through the canyon, and like him clearly misjudging a gap and scraping his wings with no damage to the wings. But that's fine. Like I like that because it's like he's in a rush and he's making a bad call. Like that gives some tension. But then helicopter swooping in, all the murdering. It's weird because he starts the fight with he first guy on the squirrel suit he gets to just pulls the chute, keeps going. I'm like, oh, we're gonna Disney this. He's not gonna kill anyone, and then he just kills everyone. And I'm like, why did that guy get away with it? Surely he just needed to like, I don't know, like.
Well, he goes in with the best intentions, I suppose,
I
and it
guess.
just goes south from there. I do think done much. Oh, go on. If you ever.
I just want to say the last part about that is how frustrating it was that they obviously had the military guys on the ground, with only one guy speaking or even apparently watching, as the audience surrogate to comment, and then not doing anything to help, even when and being like, oh, he's outnumbered in ADR, and then at the very end, like, we need to help. It's like you could have done this the whole time. Like, don't call attention to the fact that you are military people on the same op, and you're just watching him like it's a TV show. It really bothered me that they put these people in for the role of commentary and back and forth with him, but didn't think about what it means to the scene to have military people on the ground.
Yeah,
it was just like that. This is why, like, I kind of started like, oh, okay, so this is just going to be mindless action, and then they brought all these themes and stuff later in the show. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just too critical on opening spectacle.
And it'd be interesting to see how they tackle that going forward, whether we do have a big kind of action scene each episode, because we then have in episode 2 the kind of lorry convoy chase, which I think was done a little bit better than the first scene. They come up against an enemy who they've completely misjudged, had no information about, so get their asses kicked essentially. And even then, when the new Captain America John Walker and his like sidekick, if you will, turn up, then you think that they're going to come in and kind of save Sam and Bucky, but again, they don't. They get their asses kicked away. And it's just sort of like, great, no, it worked very, very well. Just to be like, oh, here we are. No, here we go. And some of those parts, they toned down, I suppose, on the spectacle. And whilst it's on a moving truck and people are actually fighting, you're seeing people fighting and a bit more versatility in kind of what's going on, rather than just swooping through the air and making missiles hit sort of helicopters and things. The scene where Bucky's hanging on just before going under the wheel and Sam scooches through underneath the two trucks to grab him. And that's kind of it. They didn't then jump up and think, right, we need to get back into the fight. They're just like, we're done. We just, our
really
asses
like
are
that.
beat. We are done. Let's just lie here in the grass.
Yeah, I really like that. Again, it made the tension feel real because they weren't obviously going to win, and they didn't. And like the robot getting, so I think that scene is so well juxtaposed against the first one, because in the first one, Falcon's by himself, but he's like, Red Wing deploy, and then Red Wing's like, cool, I have a missile which has perfect guidance. Yeah. Compared to the other missiles in the show, which constantly swoop and miss and go to the wrong thing. And then so to have, what's her name? Carly, the leader of the Flag Smashers, just go,
yeah,
was so impactful, because that thing, you felt like, okay, so this is like their R2-D2. Like, it's the two of them and Thing and Red Wing. And like Red Wing, they described as him earlier. Like it seems like, okay, he's got a drone friend now, and then it was like, nope, drone friend's fucking dead. It was so good, and it immediately showed like, these ain't your daddy's hijackers, right? Like, and suddenly they were just getting owned left, right, and center. And I also really like the bait and switch of moving the Flag Smashers, of like his weird military friend that's like his biggest fan, being like, this guy's the leader because he's strong and punched me. It's like, no, that's guy who broke in the bank because he's strong, and he was just a guy. And like I really do like the fact that like Carly, what's her, Morgenthau.
Yeah.
I like that she is a smaller build
Hmm.
and mixed race. Like she's just like, and like they play on that with Bucky seeing her and just thinking nothing of her when he's going to rescue the hostage. Um, and I thought I was like, as soon as she's just standing up, I'm like, fucking dead, man.
Yeah.
Because like no one's doesn't secure a hostage, but like you buy that Bucky just is like, I'm an old hand at this. He's got stuff on his mind and he's just like, yep, I'm here to rescue you, basically. And he
Mm.
doesn't even think, why isn't she tied up?
Yes.
And then she's like, I'm gonna kick you out of this truck.
She absolutely destroys him. Yeah, it's really interesting. Sort of easy way for us to move on to Flag Smashers now. It's really interesting
Almost like I
in
planned a sequel.
how they're being presented. Kind of enemy of the state type thing, but then you learn that actually they're there to help like the population or those who were still around in the blip and who feel like they've been forgotten since everybody has then come back. And obviously things like governments and the world situation would have changed during the blip, and maybe the people that were around and lasted prefer the way that it was, when it happened, that Thanos actually made a better world by getting rid of people. We've got that kind of floating in the air as well, but they're obviously kind of enemies of the state. But you don't just see them being badasses. We get Carly getting quite sort of tense about like the text she gets, and then them running or flying when those other people turn. The soldiers kind of
the
turn
people
up.
of the power broker.
The power broker. That's it. Yes. So we've still got a lot to understand about them. How are they super soldiers? Where do they get whatever serum or whatever they have had done to them to become so powerful? But you see the other side of them as well, that they are kind of this ragtag group. They are not a organized terrorist sort of organized terrorist organization. Brilliant. They're sort of like a small cell, and they're kind of being helped out by people. We see that in the first episode where everyone's on the app and they all go put the masks on and go nuts to try and create diversion for whatever has been stolen. Was it a bank?
Yeah, I think it's a Swiss bank. I think it was what it's supposed to be. I agree. I think it's they're clearly organized, but grassroots, I guess. Like they're not a military hierarchical organization in the same way. It's a nice juxtaposition for the fact that Sam works for the government.
Yes.
Although he's a free contractor, he's at the military operation level, and these guys and the enemy isn't another military. I think that's a really interesting way of doing the big bad as essentially a group of people who are trying to do something like freedom fighters, right? They think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think I like that. I can't remember the name of his military friend, but he's like, yeah, I was really odd scene where he's like filming in a bazaar for some reason, and then he's like, aha, I found it, this icon, and you're like, you just filmed that, just point to the thing. Can't you just say, oh hey, like in any other, in a movie from 5-10 years ago, they'd be like, I was looking for that symbol, Sam, look at that symbol. But now it's like I have to be using my phone for no reason. Anyway, sorry, that's nitpicky. It just was. So he's like, they're trying to make things better for everyone. You can see why that appeals to some people. Unity of everyone, or no, a world without borders. That's what it was. I thought that was a really interesting move, because it's not just because it's like why they want things to go from before the blip is because clearly nations probably have to come together and be more supportive when half of the world disappeared, including leaders and farmers and like, all the things, right? And so you can see how it paints the fact that it's a world without borders coupled with everyone's paying attention to the blip. Those two facts sort of paint a really evocative picture of what these people must stand for, and it is noble, if maybe misguided. I mean, who knows? Maybe I don't know enough about the world, but depends on what they mean by get rid of, like, undo the blip, right? But if it's just bring down borders and make people care about each other because it turns out in that 5 years they all kind of had to, and now people are being what they were like beforehand. Because I don't know if they're going into this. This might be me reading a lot into things, but it's like, well, if half the world left and everyone had to figure out how to get along a lot better in a much smaller world that was designed with just for sheer volume of essential workers, etc., around, and then 5 years later or 3 years later, whatever it is, five, right? It's a 5 year
It's
gap.
5 years, yeah.
Yeah. If those people all came back with their sensibilities of the before, then there's going to be a huge culture clash because and they weren't there for the unity thing. They're just there thinking the usual nationalistic general stuff, and all the bodies are there. So when people are like, yeah, but when there weren't as many people, we really had to work together. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. These people are here, right?
Yeah.
Like I can staff the grocery store. There's all these unemployed people who just showed up. Like there's some really interesting things going on that I don't think they necessarily have to go into because this isn't super political drama, but it's such an interesting setting that I hope at least they give enough time to empathize with the other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know almost nothing about that sort of time period, do we? There hasn't been kind of,
no.
Even the movies kind of went, but we're here now. So this is when we're dealing with stuff. We have nothing from in between that. What happened to all of these nations? What happened to all of the people who were kind of left? You get a little bit of exposition in terms of quite a lot of anger from like certain characters, like Tony. Obviously, he and Pepper had their family, and those kinds of things. And Thor obviously becoming Big Thor.
But these are all the privileged people who...
Exactly. This is on that superhero level that we see that. We do not see what happens to the regular people, to nation states, to all of these other things that kind of rely on each other. We don't know what happens to trade and those sorts of things as well. So there's lots of stuff that they could allude to, that the Flag Smashers can give a lot of good exposition for that time period before we then move on further into the world. But I did have a thought before you said... that it was only going to be 6 episodes, or at least IMDb is listing 6 episodes. I wondered whether Flag Smashers would be kind of the like a faux big bad. Then they're not really a big bad. They're definitely portrayed so far more freedom fightery. They're just against the US government at the moment, even though they're operating in Berlin and the US government send people in and all.
Oh, I mean,
but yeah. So we have all of that. There's all of that kind of thing that this could delve into, but I don't think then if it's going to be 6 episodes, it will.
Or if it does, it won't do it well.
Yes, exactly. If it was closer to 10, then I could see them, the Flag Smashers being that big exposition dump to get us to a point, say, from episode 6 onwards, where it switches back to kind of superhero kind of mode, and it's when Zemo comes in, however he is going to be doing it, whoever the power broker is, and all of that sort of stuff as well. But
I think it does. The power broker seems like possibly a big bad, although it kind of feels like the Collector, like someone who's big in the background but is not directly involved. They're just playing all the sides. Like Collector obviously doesn't play the sides, but you know what I mean, like just like a big power that you interact with, but isn't trying to change the world. Is just trying to thrive.
Yes, trying to make some money essentially.
Yeah, I mean, like, just by its name. Yeah,
if I've got all of these, serum that I had someone make, or I've got from somewhere, I traded from something, I can now use those to give to this group, and they're going to do this for me, which means I can then trade that for this. And you can see how that character would thrive in in the blip world, but also then in the post-blip world, trying to
snap then blip.
Yes,
blip is them coming back.
Blip is them coming back. Yes. So
I had to look it up.
Yeah, you can see how a character like that would absolutely thrive, and it'd be interesting to see how he plays in with all of this, or her, whoever they are.
Yeah.
And if it is just more of a, they're there for kind of 2 episodes. They're used a bit more as exposition about who the Flag Smashers are and maybe how they got their serum. I think maybe there's something around that, perhaps. And then they're gone, and it moves on to something else.
Yeah.
Again, we don't know how Zemo is coming into this, even though he was introduced at the end of the 2nd episode. It's still to kind of be seen exactly what
in the tropiest fucking way
Oh,
possible.
absolutely. Yes. Yes. I mean,
Opera music, slow pan of a chess set. I was like, come on. Also, why are these big bads who were the big heads of things always treated so well in prison with these anyway. I mean, it's because you can then show this scenes, but it's just like put them in a cell.
yeah,
Make it shitty.
absolutely, absolutely. And we know from the, or at least we've been pushed in a way to think that Zemo has some kind of outside world, outside prison presence, in the world. We've seen the posters with the mask on, so you would think that in some way he gets out or is brought out to do something and maybe then released into the world, not officially sort of thing. So yeah, there's still a lot for this show to do, and again, now knowing that it's only 6 episodes, a little bit worried that they're tackling a lot of things.
Yeah,
and they're gonna be smashing them in somewhere.
I mean, and the thing is, most of our information. So we're just gonna segue to hopes and dreams and predictions. I think, but most of the MCU info we have is stemming from the WandaVision's magic multiverse stuff, the very sci-fi stuff, and so I was thinking while you were saying that, I wonder if this, when you're talking about big bad, I wonder if it's going to be 6 episodes about the Flag Smashers, but what it's going to do through this series is invoke one of them new main arcs of post Endgame MCU.
Yeah.
And be like, yes, Zemo, and things like Zemo was like the power broker. I could get you to them, but they won't they won't deal with anyone but me. If I don't show, they won't blah. So then they take him out, and then he's secretly they escort him, and then he escapes. One of those standard sort of tropey things. But then maybe the power broker or who they got the serum from is part of the non-multiverse side of the MCU, because that's the thing that's actually quite quiet right now. I assume that there'll be tendrils between things, but that usually there's an arc. I'm surprised we don't have a more earthbound arc that we know about, and I'm wondering if maybe that's why this show is because it's going to help set that up, and maybe that's what this sort of feeling like they're pulling a little away from the Flag Smashers, or the fact that the Flag Smashers seem maybe one-off, and maybe it's because they're one-off not within this show, but within the orchestra that is the MCU properties.
Yeah, we have taken this big leap, haven't we? I think it was in Phase 3 or even in Phase 2 with the introduction of Guardians, and then Captain Marvel with Thor Ragnarok, and then with the Avengers. It's all then on this cosmic level, and everything kind of elevated to that. It's on this cosmic level. We've also got Doctor Strange, and it's going to be like multiverse sort of level stuff. So it's all fantasy, sci-fi kind of things. We don't have anything grounded, based on kind of Earth, dealing with the political structures, dealing with the normal people that kind of live here. And yeah, again, is this kind of going to be it, or is it going to lead us into an arc that stays grounded, and all of these other films? Because we've still got the next Doctor Strange film, the multiverse. We've got Captain Marvel 2, we've got Thor Love and Thunder, there's going to be another Guardians movie. We're still up at that high level fantasy sci-fi area, and that is the thing I loved about another thing I loved about Captain America 2 was that it was this not quite political drama, but it had that edge to it.
It was a war. It was secretly a Cold War film.
It's a Cold War, absolutely, yes. And I love that about it. And that, as I said at the start of this, that's what I want from this show. But for that to continue as well, for not this to be that stop point, and then everyone go, right, no, Marvel is up here now. It's all about beings in the sky and that much, much higher level. Don't worry about the people of the world. We've told you kind of what's going on with the state of things. We'll leave it there.
That's why I think what I really enjoyed about the show was like all the time moments with Sam and his family. And like we didn't talk about it, but like Bucky struggling to make amends.
Yes, yeah.
I thought all those scenes, including him lying to his therapist about like I didn't break the rules, I didn't do anything illegal. It's like he didn't kill her. He like his code is I'm not going to take a revenge, but I am going to use my tools. Also, how does he have access to like remote control card iPad when he's not employed by the
Yes.
military? But
Yeah.
like, whatever. That was fine. I liked that juxtaposition of him lying but still trying to do what she's saying. And then he crossed her off the list because he got her arrested for
Uh, and
leaking it. He leaked audio that he got illegally, basically,
yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
um, and that was really cool.
Hmm.
And then him struggling with clearly and having struggled for a long time with this innocent person who just saw like he fucked up. He killed a person with a witness, which that was a and but again, this has brainwashed him, so he just killed people. But he has this memory of this dude at a conference, essentially, right? Like just happening to be in the wrong place at the wrong
Yeah.
time, and he's been trying for it seems like months, right, of to deal with how do I tell this father that I killed his son.
Yep.
I didn't like again. This is so that was really cool, but then, and I thought it was really good that when we found out about that stuff, they didn't do a flashback to the guy's face. They just trusted the audience that we remembered the scene that we opened
Yes.
Bucky with.
Absolutely.
Like, good,
Yeah.
trust the audience. But then within like seconds of me writing down, yay, trusting the audience, the random waitress starts exposition dumping about
Yes.
how what really sucks is how much he misses his son, da 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 da. I'm like, why would you know all this about one of your customers and then tell a customer who ostensibly already knows this stuff because he's been coming here regularly on Wednesdays with this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing where the guy's like, my son, yada yada yada. It's like, I'm pretty sure you would have already had this conversation.
Yes.
And it was just for the sake of the plot needs to hear him say this now. And it's like, if they'd really, again, it's this loose writing of if they had been doing this for a long time where it's a regular thing that Bucky expected, I'm pretty sure he knew the son's dead, and I'm pretty sure the waitress wouldn't tell him based on their previous, like, it just sort of falls apart. And that sucks because it's like all the other parts of that, their interaction and their arc are really strong, especially the knock on the door. And like I thought showing the shrine was good because it serves the purpose of, even if we don't trust our audience, here's the nail on the head in case you were unsure. But also I think it was mostly the impact of seeing the picture made sense.
Yes.
I'm not over this. I have my shrine, I'm praying, there's a picture of him, and then Bucky seeing the picture isn't, hey, it doesn't ring the hey audience, it's that guy he killed. It rings the hey audience, Bucky can't get away from the fact that this guy is torn apart. Like, that's why that works, even if it happens to solve the issue of the other thing. And then we kind of just, I don't think he's ever going to make amends because we've literally ejected the therapy arc. With
completely.
One of the worst things, therapy scenes of ever, treatments of therapy and its importance I've ever seen, let alone in 2021. Like, mental health is going to be a crisis now, thanks to COVID and whatnot. And to have therapy go so wrong in such like classic film writer ways was really disappointing to me. It's like basically mocked, like, and especially that last scene. It's like, to hell with the rules. You come in here. I'm gonna go to the interrogation room with another person without your explicit consent, and we're gonna talk this out because I don't know what else to do. And then I'm gonna say one thing, and that didn't work immediately. So then I'm gonna switch to another thing.
Switch to something
that didn't
straight
work.
away. Yes, yeah.
It's like, it's why people think therapy doesn't work. It's why people think therapy's a joke.
It's not there for therapy. It's not there to show or to push on the ideas that we got in the first episode about Bucky and him being torn up about all of these things and trying to make it. It's there for a bit of lighthearted comedy. Essentially,
and also
showing that these two characters are awkward by making them sit very close.
And like some vague, like, homophobia, it seems.
Yep. And it just like, yeah, it's not a very, very good
It feels like the writer of that
it's
episode didn't see the script of the first one, because the first one, I had some problems, but she was very much like, you have like doing the, we're here all the time, you aren't talking, you got to do something, this is part of your burden. And then to have them be like, and now the pardon doesn't care because Captain America authorized it, and
Yep.
go die in a fire, therapy lady. It doesn't matter. But it would be one thing if they just did that. They got him to jail so Captain America could get him out, but also to get rid of the reason why he was in jail, all in like 5 minutes, while just using therapy as a joke. But I just was fundamentally disappointed with it because it didn't need to do any of that, and it was real exceptionally bad done for how the world knows better. Like it's much more socially acceptable now, and it's in it's been in enough pop culture that like people can handle something not just jokes, and maybe
Yes.
maybe mental health isn't the place you need to shoehorn in jokes. I mean, not just slow stuff aside, it just feels like that's a tired type of cheap joke that we were tired of, like that's been tired for years. Like, and so to see it in a Disney Plus MCU show is just like, really?
Yeah, and I think it, again, maybe even in the first episode where Bucky does go after that woman or gets the police, he then leans into the car, doesn't he? And he's like, I have to say, and he like super deadpan, like very kind of, trying to be a bit more comedic about the scene. Like, he's done this, he's set her up, he's gone. And then let's just throw in this little funny bit where he's got to say like why he is doing it, because that's part of his therapy. And then you're just like, yep, done. We know he's around, and we know he's still doing stuff. But
I kind of forgave that scene because it was like, okay, overall, because it's clearly his motivation is, I'm going to try and make amends. I have the list. I'm actually following things. I'm just doing it in my stupid way. And it's an action show, stupid one-liner. But you're right. I hadn't actually thought back to how that serves the same purpose of that shitty scene, which is bad. Like, it's just, it makes that line so much worse when you realize that the therapy part of, like, Bucky's so not like, I hope they somehow loop back into his backstory in life, because it really feels like what they did was draw us in with, he's tortured, he's trying to do these things, he's trying to get his life back in order, and then with that one line from new Captain America, which is, he's too good of an asset, which, I'm sorry, but the military, like, there are rules around like things, and if there really was a, like, the therapist would be able to say no. There might be political pressure for her not to say no, but like, the rules exist. My last gripe, they treat the military as like real gung-ho. Like, Captain America just seems to have carte blanche, and the therapist doesn't even like, he's new, and the therapist, he just says, I've ordered it, and she's like, okay.
I think there's a line where she said she served with him, isn't there?
Yeah,
at some
but
point.
like, just to prove, because of course she can't be Bucky's therapist unless she was also a soldier, is essentially like what her role is, right? But then the same thing where it's like, they make the point that Falcon's a free agent and he has government contracts, which is a weird brag in this day and age, where it's like, cool, I hate you more now. Like, if you've been paying attention to U.S. global politics for the past 10 years, you'll know that that's not great in a lot of circumstances when they use people like that. But which, like, gives them the carte blanche to invade Munich, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is weird because they really cared about Libya's borders. But then the Captain America, but then they use this U.S. Air Force flight like it's their taxi. But it's like, are you doing this on orders and contract, or are you doing this on whims? Because it seems like whims, in which case you need to get your own plane. You can't. The U.S. It's again this like really looseness of like trying to have it so they can be like that Falcon's Air Force friend's plane is their Quinjet. It's like, no, you don't get to do that, because he's not. If he's part of the Air Force, he gets orders. If he isn't, he doesn't get the plane. And it's like, these are very simple things that, like, I feel like this is why the loose writing kind of gets to me, because it's like, there's so many ways you can get them to Munich, etc., or make sense of these things, paying attention to the things you wrote, and you didn't. And so when, like, you can't get them to Munich without making something very confusing with chain of command and taxpayer money, and then you bring up like equality under austerity and changing cultures, and like,
yes,
like alarm bells start to ring because you can easily fall into the now, I used to be paid attention to, and now this new population came in and everyone's paying attention and trying to help them. I feel disenfranchised. That's the broad strokes message of the flag smashers, which is also the broad strokes message of some people with very misguided views about how to help minorities. And I don't think they're trying to say that, but if you say it unclearly and vaguely, you end up saying that. And that's like one of my worries is that there's an actual tension in this made up world, but if you don't handle it right, you map to tensions in the real world that you might not want to be encouraging.
Absolutely, yeah. How does that actually come across? Are we? I mean, without getting too much into it, are they?
I'm like, I'm gonna stop, but here's a can of worms.
How do they deal with that race sort of stuff? Where on the spectrum are they? Are they assimilationists? Are they anti-racists? Where are they with this, and how is that going to be? Yeah, that's a whole level of stuff that I don't think we're going to.
I didn't want to go into it. I'm just saying I have a worry because, and I think it exemplifies the like they're bringing up some really big issues, which in the world they might be able to go muddle about in, but there is a real world, right? And those issues map, and that muddling can be dangerous.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so taxi service Air Force is what I meant to end on, and then this niggling thing that I was like, I don't need to bring it up because it's a can of worms. It's a deal. I have to go bring it up.
It's anyway. Fine. We'll come back to that probably when we hit episode 4 or 5 or 6 or whenever we return back to this.
So last thing, Ben. Would you recommend it?
Would I recommend it? I mean, yes, I think I would if you are, again, a fan of Marvel. I think WandaVision kind of had that extra layer to it, didn't it? That meant if you were a fan of kind of serialized shows or the kind of the aesthetic that they're putting across and comedies and things, yes, you could have gone into that without being too much of a Marvel fan and been opened up then to the Marvel element of it. This is Marvel. This matches most of Phase 1-2 films. In the way that they're sort of doing stuff, we can see that they're trying a little bit more with the broad sort of strokes that they're looking to address. But I mean, if you like action stuff, sure. Maybe if you like that kind of political thriller, but you're not that fussed about it being maybe a bit surface level as we've seen so far. Yes. I'm not going to tell my mum to watch this. Yeah, she's not going to get anything from it. So if you like Marvel, definitely it's recommended. If not, try it out, but maybe wait until the whole thing's out, perhaps.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. With only the caveat that like you'll get more out of this if you've seen Winter Soldier. I think that movie helps both those characters, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, out. It also gives you the Baron Zemo background, and like Bucky really doesn't have as much screen time. You get that he something pardoned brainwash amends, but you really don't understand the depth of that without having seen more Marvel. Civil War is a very good movie also, but if I think I'll look at that. This is so WandaVision. I think you'd be lost on some of the nonsense, but it's also comic book, sci-fi, fantasy, like tropey nonsense. Like, so you might not see all the references, and ultimately you understand the main arc is grief, right? And it's very powerful and a really stellar example of grief on film, I think. And so that I would recommend to anyone who would be interested in something like that, even if they don't care about Marvel. This, even if you liked action, military, cop sort of procedurals, I think I would say maybe, just because, again, there's so much Marvel backstory needed to really get more out of the themes that I've brought up thus far. Like, all the, like, hanging over Captain America wouldn't quite work without knowing actually how much Bucky and Sam are attached, like, we're friends with Steve, etc. It's kind of even that, like, it opens with literally him over listening to the last line of Endgame in his head, right? He just hears Steve, he recalls Steve being like, "This is yours now," and then he goes like, "It doesn't feel like mine," or whatever the line was, and then he quotes himself later about it, and you're like, if I didn't know this, it would be like, "Okay," and then I'd be like, I guess they were talking about that shield, right? So yeah, I also think that yeah, one thing I am curious about is I feel like there's more to Captain America 2 than meets the eye, just because he seems like he's a super soldier. Like,
yes,
he did kind of go toe to toe with them. He can do the magic shield thing really well, and he like all the Good Morning America scene. I think was really hilarious with the like, here's all your qualifications. So it tells the audience like this isn't just some random soldier. I thought that was well done, and but it also so I'll end with like that's the thing I'm curious about, because I think yeah, it'd be really interesting to see where they go with why he's so proficient.
Nice.
So
yeah,
cool. Well, I think that'll do us for this week. If you want to hear more of our things, opinions, etc., you can see a whole bunch of videos, other podcasts, and articles on outoflives.net. You can reach us at Twitter, on Twitter at outoflivesnet. You can reach Ben at Nova_47. Sorry, I paused even. Yeah, you can reach me at the Omniarch. And please like, subscribe, share, and give us an email at podcast@outoflives.net if you want other things for us to look at, or comments on what we said, or on the slight switches to the format that we're trying. But yeah, that's it. Share us, etc. And for another week, I've been Aadil.
I've been Ben.
Bye.
See ya.
www.outoflives.net